Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give in this matter be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated.
Sir, will you state your name and spell your last name, please?
My name is Frank Andrew Hernandez, also known as Drew Hernandez publicly. My last name Hernandez.
Okay. And Mr. Hernandez, can you tell us a little bit of your background in terms of what you do for work?
So I'm a professional commentator on Real America's Voice. I commentate on the news, I commentate on what's in pop culture on a daily basis, and I also do on-the-ground reporting, specifically on protests and the 2020 riots.
And as it relates to the your on-the-ground kind of reporting is what I'm interested in. Were you in Kenosha on the evening of August 25th of 2020?
Yes.
And were you there to cover what was happening with the civil unrest in Kenosha?
Yes.
And were you able to do that with some type of video equipment?
I use my iPhone, and I also use a body cam. And specifically on this night, that's what I was using to document the riots.
Now, after the 25th, I don't want to know where you live, but you don't live in Kenosha. Is that
No.
fair?
No.
Was there a time after the 25th that someone from law enforcement had reached out to you to try to get a hold of some of the information that you had through video?
Yes, I don't remember his name specifically, but a detective did reach out to me.
Okay. If I said it was Detective Ben Antaramian or Detective Martin Howard, does that do anything?
One of
for
the
you?
two. He identified himself from Kenosha.
And were you able to make connection in some form or fashion with those law enforcement officers?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just briefly explain kind of how that went down?
So they requested all the footage that I had, and they sent me a Dropbox link that was not sufficient. It only had, I don't know, not enough memory because the body cam footage is, over 50 videos. But the reason why I wasn't able to follow up was because I was covering all the riots last year. I was in Portland, Seattle, Washington, D.C., was all over the country, so I just lost track.
So is it fair to say after the civil unrest in Kenosha, your employment then took you to cover other things going on around the United States?
Yes.
And so if I have it right, you and law enforcement had kind of not been able to connect for some period of time after that.
Yes.
Was there a period of time then closer to today or this trial that you were able to do that?
Yes, I did that through my attorney.
And were you able then to provide to both Mr. Rittenhouse's lawyers and the prosecution a full set of the videos that you had mentioned that you had taken?
Yes.
And so my questions to you initially will be this. Were you kind of working by yourself that evening, or were you working with a team, or what?
Yes, last year I was working independently by myself.
And is it fair to say that on that night you didn't know who Kyle Rittenhouse was?
No.
I don't know if you've heard this, but there's been other people mentioned, Mr. Rosenbaum. Were you aware of who that was?
No.
Were you aware of Mr. Huber or Mr. Grosskreutz?
No.
Okay, so you had no knowledge of any of these people prior to August 25th?
Nope.
Fair? Okay. So looking back now, understanding you're familiar with who Mr. Rittenhouse is now, correct?
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to look back on your videos to see if you had captured Mr. Rittenhouse on video, had any type of contact with him in any way?
I have had no contact with Kyle Rittenhouse, but I have looked at footage to just go over it, yes.
And does your footage capture any, excuse me, any contact, maybe not personal contact, but anything that you saw Mr. Rittenhouse doing that evening?
Yes.
Can you describe that?
So Antifa and the rioters were going head to head with the police in front of the courthouse. And as they were doing so, the police then responded. I believe they called an unlawful assembly of some sort because Antifa had their riot shields out. They were throwing rocks at the police officers. They were even trying to get inside of the hood of one of the police vehicles. And this is all documented on footage that I submitted as well. But to answer your question, when the rioters were being dispersed further down Sheridan towards the car source dealerships down the street, the rioters were grabbing concrete slabs. They were throwing them on the floor to create more rocks and to throw them at police officers. They were launching fireworks and other explosives that I couldn't identify. But as they were being pushed down the street, they passed car source 2. And the rioters identified individuals with long-arm rifles on top of the building, and they immediately attempted to agitate them, to try and start some conflict with them, saying, "You ain't the police, you ain't the police." The rioters initiated that conflict.
I'm going to object, Your Honor, move to strike. He's speculating as to the intent of people.
You need to proceed by question and answer.
Very good. Okay. So my question is this. Did you see, in reviewing your videos, did you see Mr. Rittenhouse on the 25th?
Yes, and that at that point, Kyle Rittenhouse came out of car source 2, and he attempted to de-escalate the situation.
Okay, so if I have this right, we've been all doing this for almost 2 weeks now. But this is the car source 2, or car doctor it has now been referred to. This is the place you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And that is the first time that you had observed Mr. Rittenhouse, is that fair?
Yes.
Right. And you had said that you had saw him come out from inside the building?
Yes, it appeared to be.
And did you hear, did you just see him, or did you hear anything he was saying?
I just saw him.
And what did it, to you, what did it appear that he was doing?
In the video, Kyle has his hands like this, and he is saying something, but I can't identify what he's saying, but he clearly attempts to de-escalate the situation, and he actually is successful because the rioters then disperse.
During that evening, I know that you said you didn't know who he was, but did you, in looking back at your videos, have an opportunity to observe someone that evening, Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
And do you recall, just tell me where you saw him originally, if you can.
The first time I saw Mr. Rosenbaum was when the police were pushing the rioters back to the gas station on Sheridan, Ultimate, I believe. And Mr. Rosenbaum was pushing a flaming dumpster on fire into police vehicles that were occupied by officers and human beings.
Mr. Hernandez, I'm going to show you what has been marked as Exhibit 149. Can you identify that? Tell me what that is, a photo of?
This is a photo of the event I just described.
Okay. And does that photograph, that's a still photograph of a video that you took, is that
Yes.
right? Right. I'm going to ask that you look to your left.
Okay.
And if you can play that, can you tell me if that's what you captured? Is that the video that you're talking about with Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you just back it up a second? That's good. There's a person who's putting out that dumpster fire, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall, or can you tell whether or not that person, at least visibly, was armed?
No, not at the time.
You couldn't tell if that person was armed?
No.
Did you see, I'll ask it to you this way, that's probably a bad question. Did you see a weapon on that person?
No.
And can you just play the video then? After you captured that video, then was there other? Did you capture Mr. Rosenbaum then doing anything again after that video?
Yes, he immediately was triggered and aggravated because an individual.
Now, why do you say that?
Because you can even hear at the end of the video, Rosenbaum is saying, "Why do you do that?" And right after this event is when they identified the individual with the fire extinguisher with the individuals with the rifles in the gas station, and their attention went from the police immediately to the individuals at the gas station.
So what I'm interested in is Mr. Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Did you see Mr. Rosenbaum do anything that kind of drew your attention after what we saw in the video?
Absolutely. He led the charge into the gas station. He was getting physically aggressive. He appeared to be attempting to start a physical altercation with people in the gas station, to the point where he was telling one of the individuals with a rifle, "Shoot me, N-word, shoot me, N-word," clearly attempting to start a physical altercation.
So I'm going to show you what has been marked as I think it's 150. Can you tell the jury what that is?
This is right after the dumpster was put out, and Joseph Rosenbaum and other rioters around him begin to turn their attention onto the individuals with rifles at the Ultimate gas station.
Is that Mr. Rosenbaum that we see kind of will be on the right side of our screen?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. So you observed, that's you filming that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the last thing I'm going to ask you about is was there another time prior to the shooting of Mr. Rosenbaum that you observed Mr. Rosenbaum and Mr. Rittenhouse in the same location?
Yes.
And if you know, about how long before the shooting did you see that?
So after this scene at the gas station, there was another fire at a mechanic shop a block away. Went to go document that for about 20 minutes. And when I came back is when I saw Rosenbaum in the middle of the street lighting a trash can on fire with now his identity concealed with a t-shirt over his face.
So I'm going to show you what has been marked as Exhibit 151. Can you tell me what that is?
This is when I returned to Sheridan after documenting the fire at the mechanic shop about a block away. And this is the beginning of when I see what I just described.
Okay. And I might have you stop it. So. Now, can you tell me, is this person right here? Do you know now that's Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
I didn't hear the question. Do you know now that?
That's the person in that video is Mr. Rosenbaum. Now, was that did you see Mr. Rosenbaum with that mask on that you had talked, or the shirt wrapped around his head?
Yes.
Okay. And he appears to be walking, southbound on Sheridan?
Yes, towards car source 3.
Okay. Can you roll it again? You see this person right here?
Yes.
Okay. Does that person appear to be holding something in their hand?
Yes, that is a fire extinguisher.
Okay. And does that person appear to have on something on his hands or on their hands?
Yes, purple gloves.
Okay. Is this the person right here? I know it's blurry right now, but is that the person that you saw carrying the fire extinguisher
Yes.
with the purple gloves? Okay. Now, go ahead. If you know, or based on what you saw, did this person here with the fire extinguisher and purple gloves, did that person react to anybody else that you saw at this point that was walking in front of him?
No.
Okay. Did you see him at this point? Was he, in your opinion, did he say anything?
Yes, if you play the video further, I believe you could hear Kyle saying or requesting if anybody needs medical. And the reason why it may not be shown on this is because it's body cam, but I could see this with my own vision as I'm walking down the street.
Okay, go ahead. Now, at this point, it appears this person here is Joseph Rosenbaum. Is that right?
Yeah, if you back it up a couple seconds, you'll see him even more clearly, and that is Joseph Rosenbaum, yes.
Now, when he was walking down the street, headed south on Sheridan, he was ahead of Mr. Rittenhouse. Is that right?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Now, in this photograph or still, a video, he appears to be behind him.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you hear somebody say, "Fuck you," right?
Yes.
Okay. Were you able to ascertain or make out who said that?
At the time, no.
Okay.
No.
And you see, right, Joseph Rosenbaum running after Kyle Rittenhouse. Is that about as close to the incident as you get?
At the direct time of the shooting, yes.
Did you see what Joseph Rosenbaum was doing as he was chasing Kyle Rittenhouse?
So I was at the corner of the car source, and the first thing I did identify was that Rosenbaum was charging Kyle Rittenhouse from behind. And then as he's charging him into the car source parking lot, a firearm goes off. You can see it in the frame at the top of the car.
Can I ask you this? Stop you for a second.
Yeah.
Did you hear that real time?
Hear it and saw it in real time.
Okay, go ahead.
And as the first firearm goes off, Rosenbaum is already charging Kyle from behind, attempts to throw a bag at him, not sure what's inside of it. And Kyle is right at the corner right there, in the car source, and turns around, and Rosenbaum is lunging towards him very clearly, and Kyle fires.
And do you see that with your eyes
Yes.
that night?
Mhm.
Okay. Your contact with Kyle that evening was just in terms of what you observed, I'm asking. Did you observe him acting in an aggressive manner to anyone that you observed?
In no way, shape, or form. The first time I saw Kyle, he actually de-escalated a situation.
Did you observe him at any time that evening pointing his firearm at anybody or threatening anybody with that firearm?
No.
Your Honor, I would move, I think it's 149 to 151, and I don't have any other questions for Mr. Hernandez.
Objection?
No.
Cross-examine.
Your Honor, do it after your break. It's noon.
I'm told the food is coming around 12:15, so
Okay.
why don't you go ahead now, please?
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hernandez.
Good afternoon.
Where do you live normally?
I live in Arizona.
So you don't live in Kenosha,
No.
don't live in Wisconsin.
Nope.
You came up here because you wanted to cover the things that were going on in Kenosha after the shooting of Jacob Blake. Is that fair to say?
The violent riots, yes.
The violent riots.
Yeah.
By Antifa.
There were Black Lives Matter supporters. Antifa was present. This is all documented on video, yes.
You've made a lot of videos of what you consider to be Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots in Seattle, Portland, DC, other cities, fair to say?
I haven't made them, I documented them.
Well, did you record them?
Yes.
Okay, so when I said made, you recorded video.
Yep.
And that's because you, and then you take that video and you post it on where?
Twitter, mainly, social media.
You also have your own YouTube channel?
Yes.
Do you have your own independent website that you operate?
I do have an independent website, yes.
What's that called?
drewhlive.com.
What is that?
That's my own independent website.
But is it like a news source? Is it
It's
a
an
blog?
independent website
Of what type?
for myself.
You characterized yourself as a professional commentator. What does that mean?
That means that I comment on the news professionally on a daily basis.
Professionally meaning you're paid?
Yep.
Who pays you?
I am employed by Real America's Voice.
Real America's Voice?
Yes.
What is that?
That is a news commentary, breaking news website. They have their own apps and, website.
Other than getting paid by Real America's Voice, do you get paid by any other source to do your professional commentating?
No.
Is your Drew H Live website part of Real America's Voice?
No.
The things that you post on your website, Drew H Live, do you also share those with Real America's Voice?
Depending on what's going on where I'm at. But this is unrelated to what happened in Kenosha because I was not employed by Real America's Voice at the time.
That's something that's happened since then.
Yes.
And does Real America's Voice have any sort of political bias or agenda or anything like that?
What is the balance?
It goes to the bias of the witness, Your Honor.
The bias in what respect? I assume that people, as I commented at the beginning, this is not a political trial, and I don't know how you would isolate a person's particular politics and determine that that person is going to evaluate the evidence one way or another.
Okay, I'll move on. Your videos that you have captured of these incidents that you call riots, they're very slanted against the people who are rioting. You characterize them as Antifa, Black Lives Matter rioters, correct?
Because they are rioting in the footage, yes, absolutely.
And so you came here to Kenosha because you felt that's what was going on here.
I felt like it could have possibly been a riot on the first night. So when I showed up, it turned out to be a very violent riot.
And you continued to cover that on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday nights?
I covered it Sunday night. I went back to Chicago Monday and then came back Tuesday.
So you weren't here on Monday night at all?
No.
And on Tuesday night, you were recording video with your body cam?
Yeah.
You were also recording it with your cell phone?
Yes.
The last video that we just watched there of the shooting of Joseph Rosenbaum, was that recorded on your body cam or on your cell phone?
Both.
I just saw one video. Were there more than one video that you just shared with us?
There's two. There's the body cam and then there's the cell phone as well.
What was the one we just saw?
I believe that may have been both.
Where is the body cam located when you wear it on your body?
Right here.
And when you recorded the shooting of Joseph Rosenbaum, where were you holding your cell phone?
Right here.
Okay, so the cell phone is, you're using your right hand, above your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Shoulder, same as my shoulder, right here.
And the body cam you said was over on the left side of your chest. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
The video that we just saw had a single angle. It didn't have two separate angles. So when you tell us that's both, I don't understand what you mean.
That means that there's two recordings of the same thing, and that's why I submitted to the defense and the prosecution the entire videos. There's maybe about 80 to 100 videos that you guys could examine for yourself.
I know all that. What I'm asking you is what we just watched.
Mm-hmm.
Which camera were you using to record that?
Both.
Is that video edited?
No, I have not edited it, but it has been put together at the right time, the timing.
Who did that?
I did that.
So you combined two video sources into one?
With the same timing and audio, but at the same time, it could also be seen, the jury could see for themselves if they look at the body cam footage, it's the exact same thing.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Don't wag your head in response to the witness's answer.
What you said, if the jury looks at the body cam footage, is that separate from the cell phone footage?
Yeah, there's obviously two devices recording.
And you're telling us that the video that we just watched, can we have Exhibit 151 played again, please? Mr. Hernandez, we have the video that was the last one played for you, Exhibit 151 up on the screen. Can we play that forward, please? Now, as we're watching this video, Mr. Hernandez, you're telling us that what we're seeing has been recorded by two separate devices at the same time?
This is a body cam.
Okay. Is there a point in this video where it switches to your cell phone?
Yes.
Can you please point that out to us?
You'd have to fast forward all the way to when I get to car source 3.
Can we skip, let's skip to the 2.5 minute mark, I guess. I don't know. Let's pause right there.
A little further back.
Okay, can we go back maybe 30 seconds? I don't know.
A little further back. Right, start right here.
Okay.
I'll tell you when it switches.
Okay. Can we play from here, please?
Yeah, a little further up.
Why don't we hit play right now? Is the switch going to occur after this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there. Our little, hold on, here it goes. there.
Okay. Thank you. So what you did is you took a portion of your body cam video and a portion of your cell phone video and you spliced them together.
I don't know if I would say splice, but I put them together.
That's an old-fashioned movie term from when they used to have actual film. Why did you do that?
Because it's the same exact event. Like I said, you could take a look at the body cam footage as well. You can see it as well on there.
And you're testifying here today that through your attorney, you have provided the defense and the state with that entire incident recorded on both your body cam and on your cell phone?
Yep.
But what we just saw was your editing of them together.
You guys asked for my footage, so I gave it to you.
Through your attorney?
Yes.
That's an attorney that you have out of Madison?
No objections at all.
What's the relevance of this?
Well, Your Honor, we've had a lot of questions about other people.
What's the relevance of this?
I would like to know why he felt the need to retain an attorney to provide video in this case. I think it goes to bias. I think it goes to credibility. It's been asked of other witnesses.
Let's take the lunch break. Please don't talk about the case during the break.
They're running behind.
Where's it coming from? Mr. Binger?
Your Honor, we've already heard other witnesses be asked about why they've retained an attorney before they testify in this case. But in particular, this defendant is represented by the same law firm that employs one of the defense experts. So I believe that that goes to bias.
Did you want to respond?
I think the only question that came up about a lawyer was when Mr. Grosskreutz had filed the $10 million lawsuit, which is clearly bias evidence. There was a hearing on that.
Yeah. Well, there was also testimony by Mr. Yeah, about his employing an attorney after his interview with the district attorney's office.
And Mr.
So-
DeBruin, he explained why he had done that based on what he believed to be the conversations with Mr. Binger. The fact that somebody hires a lawyer in and of itself doesn't make them biased.
Yeah, I don't see where, he may do it for proprietary reasons. People have received a lot of his material that I assume he has copyright to. I don't know, I'm just assuming, but he's a business person. So I don't know if he's got corporate or business interests in that. The mere fact that he hired a lawyer, I don't see where that's probative of bias.
It's not simply that he hired a lawyer. He hired a lawyer to provide us with this evidence. It would be one thing if he hired a lawyer to organize the articles of incorporation for his business and it had nothing to do with the evidence in this case. The lawyer was the intermediary that gave us this evidence. That was I presume, and I'd like to ask, I presume that was Mr. Hernandez's choice not to give it to us directly. And again, there's been some testimony about him providing some things to the detectives by Dropbox and then not providing other things. And I'd like to probe that. And now in the middle of trial, right. And now in the middle of trial, suddenly we're getting a whole bunch more through an attorney. And so it's not just that he's hiring a random attorney. He's hiring an attorney that is with the same law firm as one of their expert witnesses.
Who's that?
Is it Henley Burrish?
What was that? I'm sorry.
I've got the name of the firm here, Your Honor, if I could have 1 second.
Hurley Burris is the firm.
Hurley Burris is the firm. They are out of Madison. And the defense has retained Peyton, Peyton, Engel, Engel, as an expert witness. He's employed by the same firm that also is representing this witness. So I think that that goes to bias.
So you have an expert from a law firm? Is that what you're telling me? Am I understanding that right?
The expert did a phone dump. So they have an expert who does what you would describe as when law enforcement takes a cell phone and does a search of the phone.
Sure, okay.
That's what he did. They employ someone there to do it for anyone. And we used that person to do it for Mr. Rittenhouse. They did no legal work, and as that term for a lawyer-client kind of thing. He did it to do, I think it's a cell bright extraction.
If you asked me to do a phone dump, in addition to thinking, I would have to go to somebody to comply.
This is a law firm, Your Honor, that's getting presumably paid by the defense for expert witness services and presumably paid by this witness to represent him. There's a commonality there, and that, I believe, shows bias. Now, you may see it differently, the jury may see it differently, but I'd like to explore this, and the jury can evaluate how that affects the credibility of this witness. But it's not something where he's hiring an attorney to help him buy a piece of property or get him out of a divorce or something like that. It's directly pertaining to the evidence that he's testifying about in this case.
Well, I probably will allow this. I want to think about it for the next half hour. But I don't know if we're headed anywhere that's going to get us something of value. You're introducing on the subject of bias, which of course is bias evidence is admissible because it calls into credibility the witnesses. It calls into question the witness's credibility. He's generally just presented videos. There has been some testimonial statement, but I'll permit it, I think, somewhat, but you're talking about his employing a law firm, and for reasons we've already discussed, there's going to be a limit. In fact, I think I shut down somebody I was told not to inquire further on representation. Discussion with an attorney, I think it was Mr. Sharafazi asked about something and I wouldn't let him do it. So it's going to be a closely watched door. All right, anything else?
What time do you want to spend?
Let's hope for 1 o'clock. I don't know. Hope the Asian food isn't coming. Isn't on one of those boats in Long Beach Harbor. But let's aim for 1 o'clock. Folks, and you can be seated. And I have overruled the last objection, so go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hernandez, you had indicated that you have provided with both the defense and the state with your full footage from the night of August 25th. Is that right?
Yes.
And you did that through an attorney from a law firm from Madison, correct?
Yes.
And that's an attorney whose firm is also providing services to the defendant in this case, correct?
Today is the first time I'm hearing of this, so I don't have any bias because I just heard about this today.
After this incident, the shooting occurred on August 25th, 2020, you posted videos in support of the defendant after that, correct?
Can you repeat the date one more time?
After the shooting on August 25th, 2020, you posted videos on social media in support of the defendant, didn't you?
Define support.
You posted videos that you felt would help his case by showing aggressive behavior on the part of Joseph Rosenbaum, for example.
I posted the same video that is evidence today.
And in your commentary associated with that video, you made some disparaging remarks about Mr. Rosenbaum, didn't you?
What would you say is that?
Do you remember what you said?
I'd like to hear it.
So you don't remember what you said?
I have no idea. I post on Twitter many times a day. I posted many videos. If you could specify what exactly you're talking about, I could correctly answer you.
Sir, I'm going to ask you a question under oath.
You know,
Have you...
I will tell you that I don't typically permit lawyers to remind people that they're under oath. And it's happened a few times in the case here. It's not permitted. I don't think most judges do allow it. Of course, they're under oath. So it's actually a suggestion by the questioner that the witness is not being truthful, and you're welcome to argue that at the end of the trial, but don't use it as a preface to your questions. Okay?
Have you ever posted anything on social media
Yes.
in support of Kyle Rittenhouse?
One could argue yes.
You've also been watching this trial while it's been going on, correct?
Yes.
And when you've been testifying, you've been referring to the defendant by his first name, Kyle, correct?
Yes.
And you've been referring to the first person that he killed as Mr. Rosenbaum
Yes.
instead of Joe or Joseph, correct? Is that yes?
Yes.
Do you, as you sit here today, do you personally know the defendant?
No.
But yet you call him by his first name,
That's his legal name. What else am I supposed to call him?
Mr. Rittenhouse or the defendant?
I'm going to interject here. I do have a rule that is honored in the breach, as Chaucer wrote, that witnesses are to be addressed formally, so that there's no distinction between classes and races and that type of thing. Except I do permit an attorney representing the defendant to use a first name, because that would be the normal mode of address between a lawyer and a client. I would tell you that throughout this trial and every other, people slip into calling people by their first names, and if it's brought to my attention, then I discourage it or stop it. But just so you know, it generally should be Mr. Rittenhouse and Mr. Rosenbaum, okay? Okay, thanks.
You testified that you observed Mr. Rittenhouse. You made a hand gesture. You characterized him as trying to de-escalate the situation. Is that right?
Yes.
Were you wearing your body cam when that happened?
Yes.
Do you have footage of that?
Yes.
Have we seen that yet?
It's been submitted to you guys.
Right, but was it played when you testified?
No.
You also characterized, well, there was a video that was played of the incident at the Ultimate gas station with Mr. Rosenbaum and the dumpster. Fair to say?
The flaming dumpster.
You were personally at that location when that all happened, correct?
Yes.
Was the defendant?
I cannot recall. I was not there. Or I can't
You were there.
recall he was there or not. Yes, I was there.
You never saw him at that scene, correct?
No.
You also mentioned that at one point you observed a fire at a mechanic shop. Do you
Yes.
remember where that was?
It was a couple blocks away from Sheraton. I don't remember exactly.
That was some tires
Yes.
that were on fire in the middle of that lot, correct?
Yes.
And you have no idea who started that fire?
No.
You're not here testifying that Mr. Rosenbaum started that fire?
No.
You're not here testifying that anyone else in this case started that fire, correct?
I have no idea who started that fire.
In the video that we played earlier, this is the video where you're walking down the street, you see the tipped over garbage can, the road, people lighting on fire, and then you start walking in the same direction as the defendant. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, Rosenbaum.
It was
Joseph Rosenbaum.
It was Rosenbaum, furthest south on Sheridan, Mr. Rittenhouse, and then I don't know if you know this individual. There's a Richie McGinnis. Do you know who that is?
Yes.
And he was heading in that same direction between you and the defendant. Is that fair to say?
Yes, based upon the footage, yes.
And you're aware that there comes a time in the video that you made where the defendant starts to run. Do you remember that?
I didn't make any videos.
Recorded.
Yes.
There comes a time in the video you recorded in which you saw Mr. Rittenhouse start running. Is that fair to say?
After Joseph Rosenbaum was lighting a fire in the middle of the street, he had his face covered, and he stopped and started going towards car source 3, walking. And a couple seconds after, you see Kyle Rittenhouse walk past the frame with a fire extinguisher.
The question I was asking you, though, sir, is there comes a time after that where in your video Mr. Rittenhouse starts running towards that car source. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And Mr. McGinnis, who is between you and the defendant, also starts running.
Yes.
And you start running.
Yes.
Why?
Because the rioters were saying en route to car source, en route to car source, and someone yelled out either burn in hell or burn inside or burn it down. It's hard to make out. But they were clearly displaying riotous, arsonist behavior prior to that, and covering riots all of 2020. I could tell something violent was about to happen.
Such as an arson or a fire?
Possibly, yes.
What else could possibly have happened?
At the time, that's what I was thinking.
So you were mostly concerned about running to get there in time to cover what you thought was going to be a fire.
Yes.
Was your decision to start running based on you seeing the defendant start to run?
No.
So you just independently decided to run at that time?
I just told you, people were saying en route to car source. Someone said burn in hell, burn it down. And the prior nights, the rioters were burning down buildings in Kenosha.
The people that you quote as saying those things, they're walking down the middle of the road, weren't they?
Some were walking, yes.
The people that say those things don't start running at the same time you do they?
I couldn't tell who said it.
Did you, these people you're characterizing as arsonists, rioters, whatever language you're using, were any of them running towards the 63rd car source?
Some were way ahead of me, in front of me, so I wouldn't be able to tell.
So you didn't know whether those people way ahead of you were running or not?
No, it'd be too far to tell.
So I know you said you started running. What other people around you were running at that very moment? If you know.
Richie was in front of me, so I think Richie McGinnis was the one that started running, and then while we started hearing all of the noise and people saying burn it down, that's when I started to go run towards the car source.
So
3.
So one of the factors in your decision to start running was the fact that you saw Mr. McGinnis start to run.
Yes, one of the factors.
And you are, you post on Twitter, correct?
Yes.
And you have a Twitter name that is @DrewHLive.
Yes.
Is that right? And Drew H Live is your show that you have, or your website, correct?
Yes, on YouTube.
Okay. And you tweeted about this incident on the night of August 25th, didn't you?
Yes.
Shortly after everything happened.
Yes.
And you were talking about an armed citizen who opened fire on a rioter,
Yes.
right? And you characterized the rioters as planning to burn down the car dealership, correct?
Yes.
And it seems like you're suggesting then that the defendant, he's the armed citizen that you're referring to, right?
Yes.
That he is, in your opinion, took necessary action to stop these rioters. That's what your tweet is basically suggesting, right?
At the time, it appeared that he was attempting to protect the local business from
So-
violent rioters that had already displayed that behavior 2 nights prior.
So this is an example, and this is, by the way, this is at 11:35 p.m. on August 25th, 2020. I know you said you're from Arizona. Is it possible that this was Arizona time, so 2 hours behind us? Because the shootings hadn't happened here until about 11:50 p.m. So I'm wondering if that's why there might be a time difference. Do you know?
No, I posted that. Are you referring to the video of the shooting of Mr. Rosenbaum?
That's part of it, yes.
Okay, yeah, I posted that specific video maybe about 20 minutes after it happened, the original video.
And by that time, you had made a conclusion in your own mind that what the defendant did was the right thing. Fair to say?
I would have to take a look at the specific tweets to remember what I was saying and why I was saying it.
This is the tweet from 11:35 p.m. on August 25th, 2020, which in Kenosha would have been before the shooting actually occurred. And you say, "It appears an armed citizen was defending the car dealership and opened fire on the rioter who was attempting to vandalize or burn the dealership down. Before the shooting took place, the rioters were planning to burn down their, quote, next car dealership," end quote. Do you remember that tweet?
Yes.
And that was shortly after this all happened.
Yes.
Now, you were also asked if you had observed various individuals that night, and you've told us about your observations of Joseph Rosenbaum. Fair?
Yes.
And have you showed us or talked about all of the observations or videos that you have with regard to Joseph Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Do you know if you have any that pertain to Gage Grosskreutz?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't know, or no, I don't.
No, I don't know. It's a lot of footage. I would have to go through a lot of footage. He might run through a frame randomly. So that's what I would say.
Can we pull up Exhibit 152, please? And we're going to play this at the 1 minute and 51 second mark.
Sorry, thank you.
All right, Mr. Hernandez, are you able to see that okay?
Yes.
All right, can we play that, please? Pause. There is an individual who is crouching on the ground wearing a blue hat with what appears to be some white lettering on it. Do you see the person I'm talking about?
Yes.
Do you know who that is?
I do not right now off the top of my head.
Is there any disagreement that that's Gage Grosskreutz? And you were recording this because there's someone on the ground there that appears to be injured and is being treated by medics. Is that fair to say?
Yes, because they were rioting.
Okay. Let's go to exhibit number 153. Oh, Karen, are you okay? Do you need a tissue or anything? Okay. Let's go to exhibit 153 at the 40-second mark, please. Mr. Hernandez, is this video that you recorded on your body cam?
Yes.
And did you see something that was being shown in your direction?
Yes, a laser.
Where was that coming from?
I have no idea.
You recorded this video maybe a lot or two away, a house property away from the 59th Street car source, didn't you?
Yes.
And that's a laser coming from someone who was up on the roof of that car source, right?
Yes.
And you're holding up your press badge because you're worried that someone who's pointing that laser at you is also, at the same time, pointing a gun at you, correct?
Yes.
And that made you fearful for your safety, didn't it?
The context of this is the rioters had already attempted to get into, spark some kind of confrontation. That's what I testified to earlier.
Sir,
So then they
sir,
went behind this
sir.
building and started throwing rocks at the people on top of the building.
You're,
Please listen to the question.
Okay.
my question was very simple. When that person on the roof is shining that laser pointer at you and you think that they're pointing a gun at you, that made you fear for your safety, didn't it? He didn't answer that.
Anybody have a question? What did you say?
Asked and answered. He said yes.
Do you recall the question?
Yes, because I didn't want to be misidentified as a rioter.
And you were fearful for your safety at that moment, weren't you?
I'm always fearful in the midst of riots.
Sir, at that moment, when that person on the roof is pointing a laser pointer at you and you think there's a gun pointed at you, you were fearful for your safety, weren't you?
Because I didn't want to get misidentified as a rioter.
Are you able to answer that question with a yes or a no?
I will say in fairness, I think the witness has answered it now.
Fair enough. I have no further questions.
A couple. Mr. Hernandez, do you believe that posting videos of what you saw was done to help Kyle?
No, because at the moment I posted all these videos on social media, I had no idea who Kyle Rittenhouse was or Joseph Rosenbaum the night of the riot.
And the purpose of posting the videos was what?
To report. I'm a journalist. I'm a reporter.
Mr. Bringer had showed you a picture of or a video of the green laser thing. Any idea who did that?
I have no idea.
Nothing else.
Any question?
You say you're a journalist and a reporter?
Yes.
Earlier you identified yourself as a professional commentator.
All the
Correct.
above.
Is it your practice as a journalist to interject your personal opinion into the stories you're reporting on?
No.
But you did that here.
Where?
On August 25th, a few minutes after these shootings, you posted on Twitter your opinion as to whether the defendant in your mind was right or wrong in doing what he did, correct?
No, I said apparently at the beginning of that statement.
What effect does that have?
It means apparently. It doesn't mean that this is 100% my opinion.
You had already jumped to a conclusion, an apparent conclusion at that moment, right?
That's what apparently means.
But that's not what journalists do, right?
Objection, judge is argumentative.
I don't know where we're headed here.
I'll be done. Thank you.
Okay, you may step down, sir.
Thank you.